So welcome to each and every one of you. So when we think about, some of the challenges and opportunities that not only nonprofits but their peer-to-peer departments are facing, they span across a few different areas. So as nonprofits, we're frequently faced with a disconnected supporter base. And what we want is for our supporters and our fundraisers to feel connected to each other and to the organization. So much so that they start to become, recruiters and bring in new supporters to us. We often have a communication and marketing strategy that's one way, that can come across as, shouting from a bullhorn. But what we want to do is to be able to provide our participants, our fundraisers, our supporters, with a voice to engage others and even give back ideas. We often have a situation in which it's our events, our DIY events, our in-person events, our walks, our annual events that are the primary or sometimes only way that many of our supporters are brought together to connect. And what we want is to be able to provide these same supporters, these same participants, with options to be able to engage during the 364 other days of the year, and to be recognized for their contributions offline, online, and around the year. We have $0 fundraisers who have taken that first step but haven't taken the second step, that are encountering hurdles and troubles and to do so. And what they want are easier engagement asks to provide people with options to start to move up in small. Top performers who've been there, done that, have great ideas, that are often doing that on their own or doing it with just their own team. And what we want is for those same leaders to be able to share their experiences, share their ideas, share what's in their head with everybody else that's out there trying to accomplish and achieve at the same level that they are. We often have resources that have to be provided by staff. And then once they're up, they're pretty static. And what we want is for the ability to leverage the wisdom of the crowd to enable our supporters to be able to share resources and give feedback to us on the materials that we provided to help so that we improve them. We often have local affiliates, groups, event committees that are frozen from one another. They're all trying to figure out similar type issues and challenges and make similar type decisions independent of one another. And what we want is true online collaboration, the ability to bring all these people together. And we often have communication processes that are one-to-one and that require that staff is in the middle, engaging in communication in a one-on-one basis. That puts a lot of strain on staff resources. And what we want is many-to-many communication that empowers the supporters and reduces that burden on staff. And we want all that to happen in an open system that's connected to everything else that we've got. And so that's what we're talking about today. More specifically, we're talking about Small World Labs Community, which is by Personify, which is a very robust community platform that's designed to drive engagement. You can see here just some of the different kind of features and capabilities and use cases. And overall, it's designed to help broaden the base of your organization's engagement pyramid and provide opportunities for your supporters, for your fundraisers, to become more engaged and a pathway to becoming more contributors, owners, and leaders, and performing better in the process. So you probably heard me say, Small World Labs by Personify. That's because Small World Labs, up until November of last year, was not only a product but also a company. And we're now, we've been acquired by a parent company, Personify, and then we're continuing forward with the same product line, Small World Labs, and actually accelerating investment in it. And it is a leading edge online community platform specialized for the nonprofit market that is open and connects with a lot of the other systems that organizations in the nonprofit area are using for CRM, for peer-to-peer, so whether TeamRaiser, Donor Drive, you name it, to help create that seamless experience. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Wendy Vizek, who's going to talk about how the Alzheimer's Association is using not one but two online communities to empower their peer-to-peer events. So Wendy, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. I am excited to talk to you all about our two online communities. I've been with the Alzheimer's Association a little over 3 years now, and this was the first project that we took on when our new team came on board to really help and support our fundraising, whether it's staff, whether it's volunteers, whether it's participants, and so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about it today. So on the first slide, it really talks about our Walk to End Alzheimer's, which I think many of you are familiar with. This is our signature event for the association. It's a big one. We have 650 events across the country, all over, with about 500,000 participants, and last year raising a little over $77 million. Really growing fast, but not really too much in its shadow is our second signature event. It has really only been an official second signature event for us for less than 2 years. So this is our DIY event that takes place on the longest day of the year, on the summer solstice. And last year we had a little over 7,000 participants and raising over $3 million. So a really strong start to this second signature event. And what's really interesting is when we looked at this, we really tackled it with both of our events, even though one is much larger than the other currently, that both of them need some kind of structure and support from an online community standpoint. And so we went all in with both events at the same time, and I'll show you some of the differences between them here today. But again, I really like it because we really saw true value in offering something like this with our largest event, but also with our next up-and-coming event at the same time. So I'll start you off with the walk one. This was really created to have a place for our staff and our volunteers, so our committee members that are planning and organizing Walk to End Alzheimer's events and all those communities, and a way for us to share information. You know, we had we did have a website that our volunteers could go to. It was a very static, one-page, just not very engaging is probably a great way to put it, website where volunteers could go and download a couple materials. And we really saw that there was much more value in creating a true community for these volunteers and staff across the country. But with this community, we really did focus it on those those top groups around our staff and volunteers. And so this really shows this community allowed us to kind of get rid of all those barriers for staff and volunteers across the country to communicate with each other. Before, it was a lot of, you heard something great going on in Washington or in Georgia, and you had to find the staff person, you had to, ask them for whatever the resource. Now we've gotten rid of all of that, and so truly we can, from a national standpoint, push out materials, messaging, training, across to all our staff and our volunteers through our Walk Central community. So again, it provides a great resource where that volunteer from Washington can ask that volunteer from Georgia a direct question, whether it's through the email component of Walk Central or through a discussion or commenting on a photo they put out there. So it really kind of flattens it all out for us in a sense, and really allows, again, it doesn't matter where you're at, it doesn't matter the size of your event, it doesn't matter what time you can devote to it. There's a place that you can go 24/7 to really cross-communicate. As well. So if we've got some exciting contest going on, or some new tool, or again wanting to share what one of our great chapters or one of our great committees is doing, we can push it out to the staff and volunteers as well. So on the next slide, it really kind of talks about just some high-level pieces about our Walk Central community. And so obviously some of my favorite pieces are the discussions. You know, we have a small but mighty team at our national office that supports walked-in Alzheimer's, and we obviously, you know, can't answer every question. We can't, you know, be available all the time because it is a really small team. So this allows people to ask discussion questions and have other people answer them. We try to obviously answer and be part of those as well, but it's really great to see the discussions that happen, again, from committee to committee or volunteer to volunteer. We post all of our resources on here, so this is our one-stop shop for staff and volunteers. We don't keep anything different from staff and from volunteers. Everyone has access to everything, and again, that kind of gets rid of some of those barriers of volunteers having to go through their staff partner to maybe get, you know, the brochure or you know, a sample meeting agenda or something. That we don't have that issue. Now everything's available to both the staff and the volunteers. So again, all of our resources are available there. The photos and trainings areas are both really like high access areas. The photos especially, even, you know, we assumed during walk season it would be amazing because people would be posting photos from their walks, but it's really great because now this time of year, our walks are actually in September, October. So this time of year, our committees are getting trained, they're putting on events for past teams, and so now the photos are really reflective of kind of that training of volunteer component. But it obviously varies during the year, but people love the photos. They are not afraid to borrow ideas from other walks and see what great things are happening around the country. And the videos and trainings kind of go together. We have many different trainings for both staff and volunteers that range from 5-minute quick download things to hour-long recorded trainings. So we have a one-stop shop where people can come and view upcoming live trainings that they can attend, but also go back and watch all of the trainings because we record them. So again, it is that one place where all staff and volunteers have access. So we have almost 2,000 users, which is really exciting. In the last year, 51,000 downloads. You can see all the photos and videos that have been uploaded. And again, the discussions, I think, are my favorite piece of this just because it really starts to engage people and they can get questions that they have answered really quickly. So again, just some high-level stats from Walk Central. And then kind of switching gears, this is a view into our longest stay community, and it's just, there's a lot of similarities, but there are some differences. Again, this is our up-and-coming second signature event that takes place on the summer solstice, which this year is June 20th. Last year was June 21st. And again, it's a team-based peer-to-peer fundraising event, and we have teams that cycle all day or cook on the longest day their grandmother's favorite recipes to, you know, celebrate her and honor her. All kinds of, as you can imagine, different activities, as many of you all probably see with DIY. But this way we can kind of have a place for this community to connect truly virtual. Because it's not like Walk. People don't come together, you know, in 650 communities. These are teams and families and companies that are doing things on their own. And so that's why even with such a small event to start out, we really thought this was so important because we want to start it off right and we want to be able to, from the start, provide a community where those participants and volunteers and staff can come together. And so that's probably the difference between the longest stay and our Walk community. Right now, the Walk community is truly focused on those staff and volunteers that are implementing everything. You know, we do have a long-range plan that we'd love to bring in our participants, but right now the focus is truly on that core group. But with the longest stay, it's a little different because we've allowed all our participants in. Because again, this allows our participants to have another place to go since again, they're not coming to an actual event at our office or, you know, a kickoff or a walk. This provides some more virtual support to them. So again, different kind of goals of the community, but really great success with both of them. And so again, we obviously use this for our staff and volunteers that are helping us put on the longest day, but again, the main focus for us with this is our participants and allowing them to have somewhere to talk, somewhere to ask questions, somewhere to get fundraising tips. You know, someone that's riding their bike in Washington here can ask questions about someone in Louisiana that's doing a similar longest day activity. And so some high-level stats just to give you an idea. We do some different things on here. For instance, you know, because this is a virtual event in a sense, we do location roll call, where are people at, so that people can understand that people across the country and even across the globe are participating in our longest day activities. Asking people what they're doing, talking about fundraising, website help. Again, it is that kind of one-stop shop for participant FAQs. So if they want to, you know, learn more about where the money goes or tips on fundraising, they can get that all through the longest day community. But we also have all of those other resources like we do on Walk Central. So about the association, about the longest day, photo areas, lots of resources and downloads. But again, with this, which is something we've just started launching with our Walk Central, but it's different with our recognition badges. So this is where we can acknowledge different activities that they are doing, different milestones they've hit, and it worked really well here in the longest day. And again, we've just launched that with our Walk Central community this year. So it was a great area for us to pilot this in, but you can easily see with all the downloads that are taking place that this is a really active community, even though it's a smaller event. And so this is one of my favorite slides, because looking at this community, so we had 7,200 participants with the longest day, but 3,000 of those were actually engaged on our longest day online community. So again, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you look at it percentage-wise of the whole, it's huge. You know, I would love to get to that kind of number with our walk community in the future, but I'm not sure how realistic that is. This is a very different event. And so they're much more highly engaged, and again, the neat thing is I love the engagement activities. So those 3,000 people are looking at about 24,000 engagement interactions. So on average, they're doing 8 different things on the site. So it's not like they're just coming in and logging in and getting a document and getting off the community. On average, they're doing 8 different things. So posting a photo, starting a discussion, downloading a document, you know, posting what they're doing on the longest day. So again, their level of engagement is very high, and again, that's perfect and what we need to support an event like this where there actually isn't a get-together event. And so this also just kind of shows you what this looks like year-round for us. So again, the longest day takes place in June. So obviously that is high engagement. People are doing last-minute fundraising, are posting photos of what they're doing on the longest day. So we truly expect the high piece, but what we really like is that we're seeing it year-round. And again, as the earlier that we start to engage those teams and participants in our recruitment tactics, which is changing every year and truly making it a year-round event, this will really stretch out. This past year, we really kind of kicked it off in that November timeframe, as you can kind of see here, with kind of that another peak in engagement and getting people on. And this year we're kicking it off many months earlier, so I'm excited to see how this continues to grow, but it is really great to show that it's not just a one-time thing. That's, you know, those participants and staff and volunteers are not just in there around the exact event time frame, but are truly in there checking things out, seeing what teams are doing early, asking discussion questions, and really engaging with us. So just a quick high-level view of our 2 communities, which again have some similarities, but have really different purposes and very different events. So I know, Michael, you've got some other examples to share, so I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Yeah, love the stuff that you guys are doing. 2 different communities, both peer-to-peer oriented, serving events of very different sizes, very different engagement models, and then one integrated with your actual peer-to-peer fundraising platform, TeamRaiser, and then the other independent, and both achieving really great results, so it's great to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start and talk about some other examples of organizations that are using community to improve the performance of their peer-to-peer events. So the first example we'll look at is the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life. So Relay for Life, the world's largest peer-to-peer fundraising event series, raises more than $300 million a year. They have more than 4,900 events per year. And then in terms of online giving, growing at more than 30% a year. So very large, very well known in the peer-to-peer event space. But what's interesting is most people don't know that Relay for Life was actually a community-driven, a user-generated event. So it was started by a guy named Dr. Gordy Klatt, who was a cancer doctor. And way back in 1985, he, as a way to start raising money for the American Cancer Society, he wanted to, create an event to do so. So in the first year, he said, I'm gonna run, and you guys are gonna sponsor me. And so he ran alone for 24 hours, 83 miles. It's pretty fantastic. The second year, he said, I'm going to do it again, but I don't want to do it alone, and I don't think I can run 83 miles. So he converted it into a 24-hour relay race as a way to include his peers and others. So pretty interesting, given that it came up from one of their supporters and then, grew from there. Another part, a big component of the multi-step process to a relay event is something called the Luminarias ceremony. This is where, as a part of the event, they break out all these luminaria. You can see some examples here on the screen. Lay them out the track, light them on, and these are provided as opportunities to memorialize loved ones. And this was also an idea that was user-driven. It was an idea that came from volunteers back in 1989, where necessity met opportunity. At an event in New Mexico, the power went out. And so in order to continue onward, a bunch of volunteers put candles in bags, and they lined those bags around the track so that its participants could continue on. And it was such a hit that they did it the next year, and then it was such a hit, in the following year they started to decorate the bags with names in memory, and now it's a key component of every race around the country and the world. And so that Relay for Life, has always been around embracing its supporters, empowering them, bringing them together, and leveraging the best of what they give. And so as a continuation of this, the American Cancer Society created Relay Nation, which was its online community to bring together its Relay for Life participants, online. And so in Relay Nation, members can do things like ask questions. So here you see an example of, hey, I need fundraising ideas. And then they can get answers from their peers. They can share their passion for the cause in their own words and in their own way. They can collaborate in groups like this one that's connecting together event committee members from across the different events so that people who are focused on similar challenges and have similar goals can help each other. And then they provide not only resources, here's a team captain toolkit, but those resources are now engageable. So I provide something, and instead of it just being out there and we hope it's great, people can give feedback on it. We can start to improve those resources that we invest that staff time in to make them even better and more actionable. Share ideas for teams, for the event day experience, and even fundraising ideas. Here, this is a really popular fundraising idea that was user-generated. It was a way of, hey, print this out, and you can take it around and get people around work or your friends or whatnot to donate to these different squares and fill out your hope page. And this was created by a user and submitted to their online community, Relay Nation, and it spread around the country. Now, also, the engagement in the nonprofit and peer-to-peer space, we've always had that general concept of a more engaged participant or a more engaged supporter is a more valuable supporter. And in community, and specifically in Small World Labs, we track everything, and that has really proven out. So if we look at Relay Nation as an example here, and we compare community versus non-community members, one, community members start fundraising 87 days earlier. And this was a key challenge for them. It's, because they always knew if people started fundraising earlier, they would raise more money. But they always had a problem with, hey, we send out emails, get started. But that was a little bit of the the kind of stick. Hey, get started. And some people didn't really respond to that. You switch it around where it's more of, hey, come join us, come participate, come learn, come ask questions, come get ready. Instead of the asking, hey, please start fundraising directly. Hey, come participate. Well, after they start to participate, the end result of what they're looking for, begin fundraising earlier, that happens as a result. They also found that community members were more aggressive. They felt more confident. They set higher fundraising goals for themselves, about 163% higher, and they were more successful at achieving those goals. So based on what they learned and from others, what they witnessed, they hit or exceeded their fundraising goals 72% more often than did non-community members. And then all of that together in terms of the math resulted in community versus non-community participants raising 352% more dollars on a per-person basis. So pretty significant. The next example that we'll look at is for a much smaller nonprofit and peer-to-peer event that is put on by the Four Diamonds Fund. So the Four Diamonds mission is to conquer childhood cancer by assisting children that are treated at the Penn State Hershey's Children's Hospital and then their families, so local in orientation. Each year, the Four Diamonds Fund, or Four Diamonds, provides support to about 600 children with cancer, 100 new, and then 500 ongoing. So new people that they're helping as a part of this, and then others through the cancer process. And the Four Diamonds is the beneficiary of two peer-to-peer fundraising events. The first is Fawn, which is an all-day, no-sitting dance-a-thon that's put on by the Penn State Interfraternity Council, and this raises about $13 million a year. And then their second emerging event, which is called Mini-thon. And this is a multi-hour, no-sitting event, so similar, but at high schools, where each school has to come up and invent the idea, the activities that they're going to do during that period. And this event is now raising, this newer event is raising a little bit more than $4 million per year. But Mini-thon is currently very staff intensive. It's a program that is very manual. There's only 5 staff for all of the school advisors, and the Four Diamonds staff have to work with an advisor at the school on a one-on-one phone and email and in-person basis. So pretty onerous, and it made communication pretty difficult. So staff would work with an advisor at each school, and then the advisor would be the one that is then working with the students who would be the fundraisers. And then this manual process occurred for each of the more than 200 schools that was putting on Mini-thon, and that number was something that was desired to expand. And here they got in a situation where hey, we're going to have to start adding staff at a pretty high level to support all of these different Mini-thon advisors and students. And so they were looking for hey, what is another way to do that? And so to improve this, Four Diamonds launched just 2 months ago an online community called FTK Nation, FTK for the kids. And FTK Nation is designed to bring together the Four Diamonds staff, the Mini-thon school advisors, and then also the participating students on a many-to-many basis where staff don't have to be the bottleneck in the middle, where people can come together and share ideas about fundraising, or hey, how do I get a DJ, or what are your policies on when do you let people in and how late do you let them stay, ask and answer questions, meet other supporters, and overall become better Mini-thon fundraisers, just like what we saw with Relay Nation. and as Wendy talked about with the Alzheimer's Association. But they're also employing a pretty ingenious strategy to tap into their larger fundraising event, Thon, because each year Thon participants, remember it's university in orientation, about 25% of Thon participants graduate from Penn State and then they become alumni. And previously, they just went off into the ether. But the Forward Diamonds Fund, what they're doing now is creating a competitive program that includes an application process in their community to become ambassadors. And as ambassadors, if they get approved, what they do is they help bring Mini-Thon to new schools and also go to existing schools to speak with high school students, kind of tying it all together. So an interesting use case in terms of a smaller organization using community on a geographic level that's designed to help empower staff collaboration with regional volunteers or advisors who are then getting fundraising students, activated. Last example we'll go out here in terms of peer-to-peer fundraising community is a program with the United Nations Foundation. The program is called Girl Up. And Girl Up is a UN program that is targeted at high school and college-age women, and it's designed to help them become global leaders in the fight to raise awareness and support for women's issues around the globe in developing world. And a challenge that Girl Up had is how to scale this program. So back in the fall of 2011, they only had 58 clubs, and they were looking for a way. And these clubs, they were working offline with leadership, but also online in terms of fundraising. But they were looking for a way of how do we expand this program and make it better. So what they did, and here you can see a little bit of a breakout in terms of what the structure was. So led at the national level by a small staff, 2 to 4 depending on the time, that was then distributed. So leaders at the regional level, leaders at each individual club and campus, so whether it was at high school or college, each of those having their members, and then all the types of actions that we would like them to take. So what they did is they added community to this mix to help empower all of this type of collaboration that previously was just happening offline. So with that, the community was designed to, one, start off by helping all of these different clubs realize, hey, you're not in this alone. Look, this is happening around the world. You're part of a larger movement. 2, give each of their clubs an online collaboration space where they could do their work in an online environment between each other versus just in person. And on an individual basis, give each participant a dashboard where they could go in and consume everything that's related to the program, to their club, and connect them with other participants and supporters from across the globe. What they found, is pre and post, all of these desires, all of this also trackable in an online community, and the results were pretty significant. So in terms of generating actions and engagement, more than 36,000 engagement actions per month. They also had a desire for people to take leadership actions, which they were doing offline but log them online in online form, more than 700 of those taking place. And from an ROI and larger metrics perspective, helped lead to a more than 6-fold increase in the number of program clubs around the country, and a more than 20x, so 2,000% increase in team-based fundraising. This is across a 3-year period, and an increase of more than 394% in the number of reported offline activities. So some pretty significant results. This also led, we're doing another community with the UN Foundation for Shot at Life based on the results of this one. So some really neat results there from our friends at the UN Foundation. So if you think about, community and the concept and, hey, how do we bring people together so that they can connect, engage, learn, share with others in a social environment, that concept permeates a lot of different programs and structures. Here, we've got on a 2x2 grid a little bit, some examples to show, hey, strategy-wise at an overall level, how are some organizations doing this differently? Because many peer-to-peer events are different in terms of, where they're coming from, the size of audience, what their goals are, and what their challenges are. So along the x-axis here, you can see, size of events from small to large, and then on the y-axis, you can see relative openness or closedness. So some communities are being very targeted toward, hey, we're closed. It's approval only. It's designated staff and volunteers, as what we're seeing right now with the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And then others that are, more open in terms of not actually even needing an account to be able to view, and then anyone being able to create an account to participate. So different strategies that are aligned with where the community and the collaboration space is mapped to the strategy of the event. Also, different ways in terms of how community and the user experience integrates with the other tools that an organization is using. So here you can see a couple where they are integrated with the peer-to-peer fundraising platform TeamRaiser, one that's integrated with Donor Drive, and then also one that's actually existing on its own. Hey, listen, this is one that we're actually targeted at staff and volunteers, and so we're going to leave this on its own. So different options in terms of enabling configuration to map to strategy and existing strategy for the program. Today, before we wrap up, we talked a lot about, and we really focused on peer-to-peer communities, but the concept of bringing people together online for a purpose transcends constituent types. So if you happen to be a part of another division in the organization, and you're also interested in this concept of community, we also have examples of communities that are designed to empower, not only fundraisers, but volunteers, advocates, mission support, and members. I'll run through just a couple of examples here. So the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network has a volunteer community. The National Wildlife Federation has a community that is targeted at advocates, eco-leaders. Canadian Cancer Society uses Small World Labs to power their mission support community in English and in French. And then lastly, on the membership side, the American Heart Association uses community to help bring together its cardiologists, EMTs, surgeons, and nurses on a professional basis. Here are just some of the many organizations that use community to empower their online outreach efforts. Again, high focus on the 501 market. And with that, we will open it up for questions.
Wow, that is some amazing results. Wendy, Michael, just the data that you're able to share with us to underscore the importance of engagement in peer-to-peer fundraising and what that can mean to your overall program. It's really powerful. And actually, that was one of the questions I'm going to lead with. We'll jump around a little bit, but what are some of the other data points that you're able to glean from the community? And then kind of by extension, put a couple things together here. How does that affect some of your communication plans outside of the community? Did you learn from the community activities and then apply that elsewhere?
Wendy, you want to take a crack at you want to take a crack at that, or do you want me to take that?
No, I'm happy to. I'll tell you one of the data points or the finds that we learned from our communities was you can look by source or by by training or whatever. What are people consuming? And so that's valuable to us because we have a growing program and we have a ton of stuff out there, and sometimes we're worried, is it too much or is it not what they need? And so we're able to analyze, you can break it down obviously by year or by month, because certain materials or resources are more valuable in planning time and some are more valuable like during the actual walk time. So it's interesting because we look and see what people are consuming and using to see, are there things we don't need, are there trends that we're seeing with things they are utilizing that maybe we need to build out further, or again, things that maybe we think is important but people aren't using it, we can promote it more. So actually the data point around being able to kind of track that activity and what people, how many downloads, and again during certain times of the year is something that we found really valuable.
Yeah, and then on, whoops, pardon me. The other thing is, so from a capabilities perspective, in Small World Labs, we track almost 300 different actions that people take. So we're manic about tracking and information to provide more intelligence to the organization. And so you have data around, not only just logins, but who shared what piece of information to what social environment, who downloaded what resource, who commented on what, who started the discussion on what topic, interest-based, who is searching for what types of terms, and all of that intelligence can now be mined for better decision-making, better understanding of constituents. And those can be used to, one, improve the personalization and the experience and the targeting in the community. Two, what you're doing in the peer-to-peer and fundraising environment. And three, through broader marketing channels and communication. So whether that be through email, website, or offline. So all of those things together.
That's fantastic. We've talked a little bit about the many-to-many concept here, and that being really one of the catalysts of the success and the way that engagement kind of builds. But as you do that, you do relinquish a little bit of control and influence. So how do you kind of manage the message, I guess, and make sure that if people share information and reach out, that they're not spreading misinformation or inaccurate pieces of content?
At least from our perspective, so we do monitor the site and get one of the great features is you can get notifications around certain topics or certain areas, and so the whole team gets different notifications. So it may be a certain question, it may be around a certain topic, or again it may just be in general discussions, so that we can high-level monitor and answer questions, because sometimes they do ask something, that maybe we don't want them to go down that path, or it's some kind of fundraising event we wouldn't really recommend, and so we can help be that person to answer. We also do. Last year we had a really great success because we have an advisory team of staff across the country that are kind of our go-to people that we bounce ideas off of and help us build our program. And so we actually asked our team last year to help be that eyes and ears on the community, because again, we're a really small team, and so this extended group of us could help and monitor the discussions, and that's really where we kind of ask them, obviously we don't want to take away from what they're normally doing, but when they're on the community, can they check out the discussions, answer questions, because these are our, the best of our best staff, and so they know, what things we want to promote and what things we don't, and so they're really good in helping us do that and help be just a second set of eyes and ears out on the community. But we also do push different messaging. So with our walk community, we do a Walk Central Digest, and this is just an e-newsletter out to all the members on the community, so we can highlight certain photos, certain discussions, certain resources that we want to drive them towards. So again, in trying to reinforce those best practices, we do messaging not only on the main website when they log in our news and announcements section where we do put a lot of stuff, but in our Walk Central Digest is our other area where that also helps us re-engage those that maybe don't log in for a while. It kind of just reminds them that there's stuff out there for them. So it's kind of multi-prong, but we stay pretty on top of what's going on in the community just to kind of, keep it focused on those best practice areas.
Yeah, and there are also two levels. One, there are tools for moderation, alerts when new content comes up, so to be aware of what information is going up. But the other thing is just conceptually is that, when you worry too much about misinformation, sometimes you lose sight of the fact that one of the things you're competing against is a lack of information. Are people actually getting the information that they need, whether it be from the organization or from staff? And having an environment where people can learn from or ask for, and then learn from not only the organization and its staff, which we talked about, resource constraints, but also from their peers. And that just opens up, a broader set of engagement, which, helps significantly. So both things, one, to also, pivot a little bit and think about it's the expansion of information, and then two, if there's a desire to really control and make sure that there's no information, the capabilities for moderation exist.
That's great. It really is a balancing act, but the pros really speak to the fact that information is getting out there. And you can really work to leverage the power of your community to make sure that it wins the battle against misinformation. Michael, you mentioned tying into TeamRaiser. Could you speak a little bit more about how it ties into TeamRaiser, what type of information may be involved, and then how does the participant gain access, who may be using TeamRaiser, gain access to the community?
Yeah, so Small World Labs, we're the online community platform partner for Blackbaud. So we integrate with Luminate Online, TeamRaiser, Net Community, Sphere, and then we also integrate with other platforms as well. I've mentioned a couple others. So the integration with TeamRaiser is really deep. So there's single sign-on. So you create an account in TeamRaiser and come over into the fundraising and support community. Account is automatically created, and it's seamless across the two. So this is the same persona, same account that goes across everything. We also integrate profile information. So a lot of times, there are people tend to update their information more frequently in a social environment. So they might update their profile information in the community more often, address and the like. That pushes back to TeamRaiser. You can also ask additional questions. So sometimes if you just want to ask a smaller set of things during the registration process of getting involved in creating a team, but you really would like to learn more, if you can ask those questions later on in the community, and then they push back to TeamRaiser. So we integrate profile information. We also push all of those actions that we talked about. So what are people asking questions about? What did they respond to? What are they downloading? What did they share? All of those actions push back to TeamRaiser. Most specifically, they actually push back as custom interactions into the constituent record. So you can then, in Luminate Online, actually see activity across the Small World Labs community and what they're doing elsewhere. We also integrate personalization, so using the Luminate groups, those tie to the personalization in Small World Labs, and then the same thing if you're creating groups, whether they be query-based or not, in Luminate Online, which includes TeamRaiser, you can auto-assign people into collaboration spaces. So, for example, if you wanted people by state around the country to automatically be in state groups or local groups or whatnot, or committees, when they come into the community, they'd already be allocated onto that roster and into those spaces. So at 6 different levels. If you're interested more, you can actually go to the smallworldlabs.com website, and if you look under, there's an area there that has integrations. And we describe those there. You can also, I encourage you, shoot an email to Jeremy Demers. His information's up on the page. But good integration, because we're big proponents that of making the user and the data experience seamless for the end user and for the organization. And so that includes the rest of the technology topology that they're using, including TeamRaiser.
Great. Love to hear that. I actually had an exchange kind of behind the scenes with one of the participants in the session today, and I'm going to read her question word for word, and maybe you both can address what she says here. But thank you so much for the informational webinar. It's great to see these examples, but I wanted to ask how these principles apply to small organizations located in small towns with limited population and the ability to donate. It's obviously much easier to fundraise when you're well known, like American Cancer Society or Alzheimer's, but not so much when you're not a household name. What can you offer a small nonprofit based on what you've learned using communities?
Michael, it's Wendy. I can go first if you don't mind. I'll tell you only because I believe this strongly with our longest day community. It's a small event, and so just similar to a smaller nonprofit, your biggest asset is your volunteers. And I will tell you that's the reason we did this, is whether it was Walk, which is a very large event, but especially with our small one, the volunteers that are out in the community, whether they're doing speaking engagements or recruiting teams or doing donor asks, they need a place that they can come and ask questions and get resources and feel a part of. And it's, whether you've got a ton of staff or very few, that's hard to do sometimes. And so I really feel like this has provided that 24/7 support for our volunteers, whether they're committee members or participants, because our staff are not available all the time. They've got other roles and responsibilities as well. But for me, regardless of the size of your organization, your biggest asset are those volunteers. And so that's why we jumped in feet first with both of our communities, because we, at the time, didn't have a place for those volunteers to go to. So for me, that's really just regardless of size, shape, or whatever it is, it's making sure that they have a place where they can go and get materials and be interactive and be engaged.
Well, can't say it any better.
Absolutely. I think small nonprofits may have some challenges around staff and the ability for the staff to actually lead that engagement. And by utilizing some of these principles and practices, it really can extend your reach and your ability for the staff to interact with those fundraisers. So we've got about 2 minutes remaining. I want to thank you, Wendy, and you, Michael, for your insight and your experience here. Clearly, with the rise of social networks and the comfort people have, extending their ability to communicate with each other in a setting like this, I think we've seen the data really drive engagement. So I want to give you each a second to post some last thoughts, but really appreciate all you've shared with us today.
Wendy, last thoughts?
I just want to say thanks to Michael and his team. I mean, we've had a really great experience. It truly was like one of my first projects. I worked at an organization that had an online community before I came to the Alzheimer's Association, so I wasn't the one that needed to be sold on it, but the rest of our organization did. And it was a new way for us to do business, and it took a while, but I will tell you it has paid off dividends. We're looking at doing other communities for non-fundraising pieces similar to what Michael talked about. So for us, it's really still, this is the beginning. So if we can provide online communities for program pieces and other parts of our organization, I think that's what's to come. But it similar to the question that came in from the attendee. I look at it like we're a team of 4 when it comes to our walk events at a national standpoint, and we cannot provide enough support to our staff and volunteers, and so this allows us to do that. And with the longest day, it's very similar. We have a small national team, but now we have a really larger community that supports everyone, whether they are staff or volunteers, and again, just one of our best moves with our programs for sure.
Yeah, and then this is Michael. My closing comments would be the concepts of engaging, connecting, and collaborating online, permeate all areas, and they're there regardless of size or purpose. Those are general, universal benefits. And so, thinking about community in that way, I think can be helpful. And then, secondly, is as an organization, we're really passionate about helping great organizations become more effective, whether it's software or approach or expertise. And so we're really excited to be able to work with each organization that we can and help them achieve great things. So if you guys are interested in learning more, just let us know.
Great. Well, thank you both, and thank all of you on the line who joined us today. I'm very confident that you were able to take away a lot of great insight and potential actions for your own organizations. And I wanted to remind you that this session is recorded. So if you want to go back and pick up on some of the things we've talked about or share with a peer or someone else in your organization, please feel free to do that. We'd love for more people to hear some of the great content today. If you are planning on joining us for the next session, you will need to log out of this instance and log back in using the link that you received at registration. We've got more great content coming after just a short break, but really thank you for joining us during our second session of the Peer-to-Peer World Virtual Conference. Michael, Wendy, thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Jeremy.